Alright, what is up, my guys, my gals, my non-binary pals? Welcome to Live with Books. I'm Liv, and we're going to talk about some books, specifically the books that I read in the month of April. I've got some stats. In April, I read 6 books, which maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but seeing as how between January and March I only read 9, we're going to take it. All 6 books added up to 1,830 pages, and I bought 15 books in April, but we don't need to talk about that. Of the 6 books, I read 3 horror, 1 nonfiction memoir, 1 fantasy, and 1 sci-fi. Out of all those, I didn't rate 1, which was the nonfiction. I gave 2 3.5 stars. I gave 1 4-star, and I gave 2 5 stars. And that gives me a 3.5 average for the month of April. We're going to go through the books from lowest rated to highest rated, so least favorite to favorite, although they were all 3.5 or higher, so I can't really say that there was, well, I mean, I guess I can say there were least favorites. I am, though, going to start with the nonfiction, which I listened to on audio. I listened to All Boys Aren't Blue by George Matthew Johnson. I listened to this because I had to drive like 6 hours total to upstate New York and back. And I wanted something to listen to, but usually I gotta follow along with the book. But most of the time, nonfictions, especially if they're read by the author, feel more like a podcast, and it helps me pay attention, and I can actually focus on it while I'm driving. But All Boys Aren't Blue is actually a YA memoir, and it's about kind of living both as a black man and as a gay black man, and what it was like for George growing up. The tagline of the book is he lives in a society that wants to kill him and in a community that if you aren't seen as straight, you're seen as dangerous. And oh my god, that was a big sigh from the dog. I don't know if you heard it, but oh my god, it packed a punch. There were so many just like little lines that made me almost want to cry. Dog is gonna howl. Yeah, there were so many just like hard-hitting one-liners where like I could feel myself almost sobbing in the car. I did cry a few times, and then there were just like gut-wrenching moments. And also there was a chapter called Abe Lincoln Lied to Me, which is definitely not one of the chapters that should make you cry, but it made me sob just a little. Just, you know, actually confronting and thinking about how bad the American education system is and how much we erase. Actually, in this book, the line that George uses is that American history is the greatest fable. And boy, do I agree. But if you like memoirs, if you like nonfiction, if you're looking for something to listen to, I do strongly recommend. I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, moving into the 3.5s, I couldn't decide which order to put them in, so I just didn't. So the first one we're going to talk about is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This follows an 8-year-old girl, Wen, and her 2 fathers, Eric and Andrew, and they're staying in a cabin in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, and 3 or 4 people just show up. They meet Wen outside first, and they tell her that everything that is about to happen was not your fault. And then they knock on the door, and they say, we need you to all collectively do this one thing, or the world is going to end. And that's all I'm going to tell you. I enjoyed it enough, but probably just for like a good chunk of the middle, I was just a little bored. And then also like these 4 strangers, they're showing up and they think that what they need these people to do is gonna save the world. And just like the fact that none of them once explained it well, like not a single time was it explained well, that I was just like, come on. Like, this is also important to you, but you can't figure it out. But I love the concept of the book. And then in the same vein of Chlorine, there's one point where a character in this gets concussed and we're reading from a concussed person's perspective. And I really enjoyed that. And then this has a very ambiguous ending. And I do enjoy an ambiguous ending. I'm not someone who doesn't like an open-ended book, so I did really enjoy the ending of this as well. There was just like a part in the middle for me that really felt like a slog. Okay, so the next book I gave 3.5 stars. Maybe it's going to be controversial. Maybe it's been too long that it's not controversial. Maybe just because there's been so much hype for so many years that I thought it was going to be a 5-star. It's Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Bestie, I didn't love it. I also read it on my Kindle during a week-long period where I just had like the worst allergy like bout of my life. But I was so congested that for a week I just had a migraine on and off. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But just that book, I was really, really interested in the first half. And then once we got to the second half, I felt like it really slogged on for the ending to just be like, I wanted it to destroy me, okay? So many people, they're like, I was sobbing, what an ending, it's the saddest book, and I just like, it's easy for me to cry when it comes to a book or a movie. It's easy for me to cry. And I didn't. I got teared up a little at one point that had nothing to do with why people actually usually really cry when they read this book. I also just realized I didn't tell you what it's about. I'm sure you know, but we're following Achilles and Patroclus, but this is twisted as their love story instead of just them being two straight dudes. And then in history, it has always said that Achilles was kind of a dick to everyone, which is shown in the book, but he would be kind to Patroclus. I definitely don't say that right. Patroclus? Who's to say? But I wanted it to devastate me, and it really didn't. It really didn't. And I don't know if it's because I know enough about Greek history that like I really wasn't all that surprised, or if just by the end of the book Achilles was really freaking annoying me. And like I know he's supposed to. Okay, hubris. It's the Achilles heel. I get it. But I just was so over him. At the end, I was so over it. So it was only a 3.5. That being said, the writing, everyone raves about it. It was really phenomenal writing. I think the ending was written beautifully. I just think it didn't hit. It didn't hit for me the way I wanted it to hit. I was like, I'm a little bored right now. Why do I keep doing this? I need to tell you about the book before I start talking about how I feel about book. Like, bitch, start over. We're learning every day. Retake. My 1 4-star of the month and my 1 sci-fi was The Seep by Chana Porter. This book follows a 50-year-old trans woman, which I really love to see because I feel like most of the time when I read trans stories, we're either following like young adult or new adult or like young 20-year-olds or small children in middle grade. So it was really nice to see just a badass lady living her life. This follows Trina, I believe, and her wife Deba as the Seep, which is this alien substance, I guess, because they're not actual bodied aliens, comes to Earth and it like completely ends capitalism and changes the whole way that the world can work. Like the Seep is pretty much magic and you can do anything with it. You can change like your entire facial structure if you want. You can get a tumor removed and go do yoga an hour later. It's really kind of this incredible substance that no one is ever pissed about. And now no one can die, but you can choose to move on into your next life and be reincarnated. And Trina's wife, Deba, decides that she would like to be reborn as a baby because she didn't have a good life with her parents growing up, and she sees it as a chance to redo that and make it happen. And Trina sees it as Deba wanting to leave her and abandon her and doesn't want to be in their marriage anymore. And then Deba does it anyways, and the book is kind of just like we're following Trina on this kind of alcoholic binge she goes on, and then she finds a young boy by himself and kind of goes on this adventure to follow him and see how he's doing and if he needs anything, because he's alone in the world and she's alone in this world, but she's like drunk the entire time pretty much. There was a point where I thought this was going to be just like a little like a 3-star. Like there was a very small chunk in the middle where I was like, I'm a little bored, and then suddenly at the end I had like tears streaming down my face, streaming. And like I don't even think it's meant to be that sad. Like it is a portrait of grief and losing a loved one, but I don't think it was really the intended purpose. But if you watched my prior wrap up, you know that the first quarter of the year was a rough one for me, so maybe I just needed a good cry. But it was like, do you know when you read a book and it's like hot tears were trailing down her face? That's literally what it felt like. It was like an endless stream. So it ended up being 4 stars. I still need to go back and read this short story. It's like set in the Seep world, but isn't actually part of the book The Seep. Just this publication of the book It has one of those annoying fake stickers, and it says plus a never before seen story in the Seep world. And maybe I'll go back and read it, but I say that as someone who has read every Cassandra Clare book and says, I'm gonna go back for that short story, and never once have I gone back for that short story. So we'll see. If you've read this and you've read the short story at the end, let me know if it's worth it. Okay, it's time for my 5 stars. Okay, out of my 5 stars, there was an obvious winner because one of these books is like my new favorite book. I am obsessed. There's a theme with the earring and the shirt and the favorite book. And we'll get there because we're going to talk about the other 5-star first. The other 5-star is Bunny by Mona Awad. I know, I can't believe it took me so long to read it. Part of it taking me so long to read it is because I needed this hardback edition so bad. And I thought I had really finally found one, and it said nothing about it being used. This is literally an old library book. There is a stamp in it that says no longer property of the Denver Public Library. That's fine though, I loved it. What a good time, guys. If for some reason I am the first person telling you about this book, look, I'm like shaking. I'm so excited. It follows a girl named Samantha, and she's in this literature program at this prestigious Ivy League school. And there are 4 other girls in her program, and they're called the Bunnies because they call each other Bunny all the time in like that obnoxious way. When you're in high school, there's that group of girls who after every class like screams and runs down the hallway and hugs each other because they haven't seen each other in so long. So it's, I love you, Bunny. What did you do last night, Bunny? I hung out with you, Bunny. So silly, don't you remember? Actual line from the book. Crazy. But this book kind of starts out with Samantha really hating these girls. It's the second year of their program. They didn't really talk at all. The first year, they all kind of really hated every piece of work she put out, and she just felt like she was being ostracized. But she is kind of like a little obsessed with them, even if it's like being obsessed with hating them. And then in this second year, they invite her to join their smut salon, which is what they call their little gathering every week. And it's pretty much from there just her being indoctrinated into this weird cult. And oh my God, did I have a time. I had an amazing time with this book. The biggest thing where I was like, this is a 5-star for me was I was like laying up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like obsessing over what the twist could be. Because I read the synopsis for the first time, and this thought that I had in the beginning that could be the twist, I was like, no, that can't be it. That's too easy. And then I read just one line of the synopsis, and I was like, what if I am right? Like, what if I am true? And I was like theorizing every way that that twist could happen, and it could still be a twist with me knowing it was going to happen. And then I kind of just had this unhinged 3 a.m. thought where I was like, you're having this crazy thought process obsession the same way that Samantha is having these crazy thought process and obsessions about. The way I watched so many reviews about this camera, and not one ever said that it overheated and shut off a lot, but it's continuing to be a trend. That's okay. I remember exactly where I was. I was having the same obsession and thoughts about this book that Samantha was, and I was like with the bunnies, and I was like, it's 5 stars. Like, no matter what happens at this point, it's done what it's needed to do, and I'm in. That being said, the way that the twist worked out was not one of my hypotheses, and I am still laughing, and if anyone has read this book before, please just slide into my DMs, because I just have one question from the beginning of the book that I'm like still thinking about, and I'm like, how did it actually play out? What actually happened in this situation? It's funny. It's just funny. If you've read this, please, I need someone to laugh with just over like what I am picturing in my mind's eye about just one nonchalant little scene in the beginning, but knowing what I know from the end. Oh my God, just what? The final 5th star. The cream of the crop, okay? The book that is definitely landing on my favorite books of this year, and I am now so obsessed. I've got my Ghostface shirt on. I have little Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, let's be clear, VHS earrings in, because the book is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. It has been a long time I don't even think it's ever happened that I have loved something so much that I'm like, I am making that my personality until till the end of time. That is my personality. I don't want to show my millennialism. I still don't know the difference between fan or stan. I am now Stephen Graham Jones stan. I love this freaking book. Let me give you a synopsis before we get into my rave love for this book. This book follows 17-year-old Jade finishing her senior year of high school and into the summer. Jade is obsessed with slasher films. Just like obsessed with mostly 80s, but some 70s and everything. And throughout the book, it's like filled with, you can get Slasher 101, which are these extra credit papers that Jade was writing her history teacher on the history of slashers. And it's just like, it is such a good time. So Jade, my girl, obsessed with slashers. And suddenly some things start happening in her town. And she really thinks that an actual real life slasher cycle is starting in her town. But there's no way for her to prove it. No one really believes her. And she honestly is kind of a little gleeful because in Jade's mind, no one more than her hometown deserves to go through this. Like there are parts where she's like crying with joy because she's like, y'all about to get what you're gonna get. This is filled obviously with so many slasher references. It's so good. My guy, Stephen Graham Jones, through Jade, via Jade, acknowledges Chief Hopper from Jaws for what he is, and that is a final girl. I just, like, when I tell you I am obsessed, I am obsessed. We're talking Song of Achilles didn't make me cry. I cried at the end of this, and then I cried in the acknowledgements. The acknowledgements made me cry. Are you, like, I don't even know how to express how much I love it. Okay, I want one of those shirts that has embroidered lettering that says, I love Stephen Graham Jones as much as he loves Wes Craven. Wes Craven, that's why this is here. Because in the acknowledgements, it shut off again, but also like crazy concept. Maybe when it tells me to let it cool, I should let it cool and not immediately turn it back on. But this is the last book, and I waited like 3 minutes. But in the acknowledgements, I remember what I was saying. Stephen Graham Jones is writing kind of everything that inspired this book, and obviously a large part of it is Wes Craven, because Stephen Graham Jones loved all of these slashers when he was growing up. But he talks about how many times he wrote this book, which originally for the first time was like in 2013. The dog kicked the bench, sorry. In 2013 after The Last Final Girl came out. He was like, he wrote it then, and like the first few times he wrote this book, it had a male main character. Then obviously this came out in 2021, not obviously, this came out in 2021, but it's set in 2015 because that is the year that Wes Craven died. So this entire book really is an ode to Wes Craven. So yeah, I want a shirt that says, I love Stephen Graham Jones as much as he loves Wes Craven. And really I should probably read some more SGJ before I make this, but like, honey, I am in. I'm gonna read the next two this in May. It's May? Yeah. I'm reading them as soon as I can. I am putting one book in between this and Don't Fear the Reaper, so my love for this doesn't fuel my feelings for the rest of the series, and I am refusing to look at any other reviews or anything. I'm just gonna go into them and see what I think and see how I feel. I love this book. Also, I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but 3 of the books that I read this month were from my backlist TBR. I owned them before this year, and 3 I purchased this year. And you know, we will take an even split. I'm fine with that. So these are the books that I read in April, or at least 4 of them. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought. If you've read Bunny, please hit me up so I can just talk to you about this silly, goofy time that will not leave my head. It haunts my dreams. But thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you read in April. Did you find any new favorites like I did? I want to know. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Navy, no. Oh, we're still recording. Ugh.